Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada, Aaron Ford. He's here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from the Bank Saloon in Carson City here in the conference room. And we're delighted to welcome to the program the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada, Aaron Ford. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir. And I'm sorry it's been so long.
It's okay.
So we're delighted to have you back. And also, I want to mention that you just announced your campaign for a second term.
I did, absolutely.
So are you excited about that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a great 2 years so far. I'm looking forward to rounding out my first term and beginning a second in 22.
What's the thing you're most proud of in the first part of your term?
Well, there are a lot of things I'm proud of. Probably nothing I'm most proud of, but the underlying goal of our office is to live up to our moniker, our motto, and that's our job is justice. So looking at justice through the lens of what we call our 5 C's has been something that I've been proud of us being able to do. Those 5 C's being consumer protection, the protection of constitutional and civil rights, criminal justice and reform, community engagement and involvement, and client and constituent services. And so I'm proud of our office for being able to do that, especially through the 6th C that thrust itself upon us, COVID. Being able to do all those things in an expedient and efficient way over this last year in particular has been something that's worth noting, I think.
And most people don't realize, but if you were a private law firm, you'd be the biggest law firm in the state.
That's right.
All right, let's move into some issues. Domestic terrorism. Back in May of 2020, I was getting information fed to me about the Proud Boys activity in Las Vegas and their spoken intent to come north. And then when I spoke to Washoe County DA Chris Hicks about any concerns regarding them or domestic terrorism, he said he wasn't aware of any concerns at that point in time. When was your office aware of the Proud Boys?
Well, the Proud Boys obviously is a organization, a group that's been around for a long time. So we've been, obviously aware of the existence of the organization. Domestic terrorism in general, however, has been on our radar for a long time. Even before I was Attorney General, I recall my predecessor having a law enforcement summit where they talked about domestic terrorism, and they specifically designated sovereign citizens as an issue for our state. They hadn't been necessarily committing violent extremism, so to speak, but they had been doing paper terrorism, and there had been some threats or reports of people threatening to set up, sovereign citizen tribunals, so to speak, and to have trials for state actors in those tribunals. And so, Nevada, has a history of those types of ideologies and groups existing, and we are acutely aware of those in our office.
How big of a threat do you feel it is at this point in time with all the publicity that has surrounded this since January 6th?
I think it's big enough to be concerned about it. We in our office stay in constant communication with all of our local and our federal partners. We have a domestic terrorism link on our website asking folks to, excuse the cliche, that if you see something, say something. That denotes some of the different things you can be on the lookout for from a domestic terrorist perspective, and ensuring that we in our office at a minimum are prepared to address anything that arises. Okay,
so what things should people be looking for?
Well, in the sovereign citizen context, as we've indicated, these are individuals who, for example, would not have an original or official driver's license. They would claim they didn't have to have one, and they would have their own level of identification. We could see people filing bogus reports or records with the county recorder's offices claiming liens on properties and things of that sort. So when you see those types of things taking place, or when you become knowledgeable of those, you should report those to the local authorities and to our office as well.
Domestic terrorism in the state of Nevada is not something new. I was doing a little bit of research on the Sagebrush Rebellion, and in some ways it really goes back to the 1960s, but was pretty active in the 70s and 80s, especially in the extreme northern part of Nevada, Jarbidge, etc. But there were also in the 80s bombings in Elko and Reno at the BLM offices. Do you have concerns that with the current climate in this country, that and in so many cases the denial of the election results, that we could see something like this, bombings or something like that occurring again in Nevada?
Well, what I would say again is we stay prepared to address issues as they arise. If we hear through the grapevine things percolating, then we will again coordinate with our local and our state officials and our federal officials and our partners to ensure that we have appropriate personnel prepared to address issues and things of that sort. So whether it's in Las Vegas with the Boogaloo Boys trying to infiltrate a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest and endeavoring to use Molotov cocktails to cause problems there, or whether it's conversations around other parts of the state, in other parts of the state around the possibility of domestic terrorism, we'll be ready to address those.
You have to have concerns, obviously, about casinos in Las Vegas. I mean, going back to 9/11, a lot of the people who are flying planes into buildings in New York City and around the eastern part of the country were in Las Vegas prior to that. Is domestic terrorism now a higher priority than foreign terrorism at this point?
Well, domestic terrorism is absolutely high on the radar, not again just in Nevada, but we've heard our newly confirmed Homeland Security Director, Mr. Mayorkas, I believe is how you say his name, issue as maybe within the last 2 weeks a domestic terrorism alert. So it's something that we have to be concerned about, something that we have to be vigilant in responding to, and it's something that we are again prepared here in our state to work with our local and state and federal partners to address.
Are you comfortable that you're getting enough information from federal authorities, the FBI? Because I know that the Southern Poverty Law Center certainly puts out lots of information about these kinds of things. But is there, because one of the things that strikes me, and this is no offense to you or your office, but it seems like around the world, because of CCTV cameras, that we are able to pinpoint after an incident who did it. Like, for example, what happened on January 6th. Federal authorities are going after as many of the people that were a problem in the Capitol as they can. But we seem to have less of an ability to know in advance that something's going to happen. The Capitol Police reports are that they knew that there was going to be a problem, but not on the order that it was. Does that concern you that we are great at responding after the fact, but not necessarily prior to?
I mean, I do think we have to be more proactive, absolutely. And intelligence is there and out there, and we need to be able to address that intelligence and try to prevent mass casualties and problems like we saw on January 6th. But the response is equally important. And so to the extent we are engaged or experiencing some contemporary or concurrent domestic terrorism or violent uprisings, then we need to have the proper resources to respond to that. I won't purport to speak on behalf of Capitol Police and what happened in DC, but I think common knowledge is that the response also was not appropriate, and sending additional support didn't happen fast enough. And we would absolutely try to avoid that here in our state, again through the great working relationships that we have with local, state, and federal officials.
Do you have concerns, because it seems like members of the Bundy family are starting to make their voices heard quite loudly again? Is that a group that you're keeping your eye on at this point in time, and do you have concerns there?
Well, I won't detail which particular groups we're going to be looking at, to be sure, right? But again, it falls within the same answer that I've already provided, which is to the extent these types of things are taking place and conversations are taking place and we have knowledge of those, we are monitoring it, and we will be prepared to address it if the ugly head of domestic terrorism rears itself.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back more with the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada after this timeout.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
Because of UMC, I'm putting my free time to good use.
Because of UMC, she keeps me on my toes.
Because of UMC and this guy, I'm here.
UMC, the highest level of care in Nevada.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
Get in on the action at the Tamarack Casino and win your share of $100,000 guaranteed. Now through February 27th, plus 5 times points every Friday. $100,000 guaranteed at Tamarack Casino. Your good times are at Tamarack.
Enjoy exceptional value and a comfortable atmosphere at Reno's newest steakhouse, Nevada Steak.
Your good times at Tamarack.
Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada, Aaron Ford. Let's talk about Antifa for a moment. What are your thoughts about what Antifa is, how much of it exists in Nevada, concerns or no concerns about it?
It falls within the same context of the conversation we've already had. And I have been unequivocal in indicating that peaceful protest is entirely appropriate and that anyone engaging in violent protest should be arrested and prosecuted. So whether it's Antifa, whether it's the Boogaloo Boys who we caught trying to blow up buildings in Southern Nevada during the peaceful Black Lives Matter protests, or whether they're so-called militias that are engaging in violent extremism, they need to be held accountable.
Do you think that there should be equivalence between what happened on January 6th and what happened in Seattle and Portland over the last year?
I'm not certain what you mean by equivalence.
A lot of people, okay, so on a political basis, and it seems to me that like most of our attorney generals, that you have been bipartisan in your running of the office. I have not seen you leaning to one side or another. But when people talk about what happened on January 6th and the complaints that some have about that, that people will turn around and say, yes, but nothing was done about what happened in Seattle. Nothing was done about what happened in Portland. So that's where I'm saying, is there an equivalence there, or are they completely different topics?
I would say there's no need to conflate the instances. When things were happening in Seattle and Portland or wherever the other places you mentioned, I spoke out. And my Republican colleagues, I suspect, spoke out against that. And when January 6th happened, I spoke out on that and lent out, reached out to my counterparts to have them likewise speak out on the issue. And they wanted to conflate. They wanted to engage in what you've just indicated was the whataboutism of what happened, last summer, with respect to other instances. And I don't believe it's necessary to conflate occurrences. Call out what's happening at the time it's happening, especially when those things are happening at a time and it's inappropriate. So January 6th stands on its own as an insurrection, trying to overthrow or trying to stop government functions relative to the Electoral College count. So, again, I don't feel it's necessary, and in fact, I think that it undermines the seriousness of the matters when you do the whataboutisms that so many people do. Don't conflate, just address it as they arise.
Let's talk about criminal justice reform, because that is going to be one of the major issues of this legislative session as we sit here in Carson City. One of the bills you're pushing regards no-knock warrants. Explain for those that don't understand what that is and why it's a problem.
So I would refer your viewers to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky in particular, and in more particular to the killing of Breonna Taylor, a young black woman who was wrongly killed by police officers who raided a home using what's called a no-knock warrant. They didn't knock and announce her presence to allow the people on the inside to open the door and to allow people to enter. And what ensued was a shootout that led to the killing, the innocent killing, the killing of the innocent Breonna Taylor. I view that as, again, an opportunity to address issues on a proactive basis in our state. To be sure, it's reactive in the sense that we saw what happened to Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, but we don't want to see that happen in our own state. So I looked around to see what our practices were in our state, and to our law enforcement agencies' credit, they don't engage in no-knock warrants on a frequent basis. And in fact, our largest organizations, the last times they've ever used them were years ago. So that's great, and kudos to them. But the issue I'm concerned about is that with the change of administration could become a change of practice. And right now, the restrictions on the use of no-knock warrants are purely because of policy within the local law enforcement agencies. I feel as though we need to put into law the best practice of no-knock warrants to make it the policy of the state, and that's the purpose of the bill.
Just to reflect on what you just said, so you have concerns about the Biden administration, or do you have concerns that going forward there would be a different response from a conservative?
Oh, no. When I said administrations, I mean administrations at local law enforcement agencies.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry. I just wanted to clear that up because I didn't understand that. Do you have concerns about getting meaningful reform out of this session when the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Majority Leader both work for the Clark County DA's office? And he will be on the program for a program that will air later this week, so I will get to ask him about that too. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it seemed like some reform efforts were stymied during the special session.
The answer is no. I don't have that concern.
Why?
Because I know these people.
Okay.
And just because things were stymied doesn't mean that it was only because of one individual. To be sure, some individuals have, wield more power in that building than others. But the truth of the matter is, I have worked in that building over the course of years. I have been the leader of a chamber there, the Senate chamber, and I myself have had to kill bills that I thought were appropriate for purposes of criminal justice reform because I couldn't find the practical approach to effectuate those policies. And so I don't have a concern about that, and I think it's frankly unfair to impute the policies of an employer onto a particular senator or assembly person. So I don't engage in that. And in fact, a conservative columnist wrote an op-ed, commending me for what I was trying to do in certain areas. And I hate it when people write things that are good about you, but they want to, put a slight in against other folks. And so in that same article, he likewise talked about problems that could arise in the context that you're speaking, and I refuted that. Said, I appreciate you highlighting my positive efforts, although I disagree with your contention that there's some conflict that can be overcome. So that's a long answer, but the short answer is no, I don't have that problem. I don't have that concern.
And just to give credit where credit is due, this was Michael Schnaus from MPRI that appeared in the Nevada Independent. So if people want to go back and read that, and it was a terrific article. Civil asset forfeiture, where do you stand on that? Because it seems like that has been an issue where police departments have utilized money from civil asset forfeiture. And just to, I guess, simply explain it, if somebody's driving a car from Reno to Salt Lake City and they have a bunch of cash in their car, they get pulled over, the police have the ability to take that money and under the thought that it might be drug money or some illegally gotten gains, and then instead of innocent until proven guilty, you're guilty until proven innocent, because you got to go hire an attorney and fight to get that money back if it is indeed legitimate. So where do you stand on this?
The same place I stood on it in 2015 when my colleague Greg Brower and I tried to effectuate legislation to limit the use of civil asset forfeiture. I've not changed my mind in that regard, and that's my position on it to this day. We need to find some ways to reel back, the use of those types of things. I'll have to go back and check the legislative history to see what ultimately happened with the bills we were trying to pass during that time period. But I know we've had those conversations for years now, and I've always been on the side of limiting the use of civil asset forfeiture.
All right, let's take another break, and we'll be right back with the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada after this time out.
Get in on the action at the Tamarack Casino and win your share of $100,000 guaranteed. Now through February 27th, plus 5 times points every Friday. $100,000 guaranteed at Tamarack Casino. Your good times are at Tamarack.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Come visit Design Outdoor's store and backyard to see our wide selection of fire pits, barbecues, and pizza ovens, natural stone water features and fountains, and frost-proof pottery. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
Get in on the action at the Tamarack Casino and win your share of $100,000 guaranteed. Now through February 27th, plus 5 times points every Friday. $100,000 guaranteed at Tamarack Casino. Your good times are at Tamarack.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada, Aaron Ford. What policing reform legislation, if any, do you want to see now that the whole country is aware of the racial inequities in the system?
Policing reform, is that what your question was? So I have, in addition to the no-knock warrant bill, I have a bill that's called Pattern and Practice, is the common moniker that's used to describe it. It is a bill that will provide my office the ability to institute what we call pattern and practice investigations in response to contentions that there are unconstitutional practices that law enforcement agencies may have vis-a-vis particular groups in our state.
For example?
For example, if there's a contention that a particular law enforcement agency stops and frisks black citizens or brown citizens more than they do their counterparts, then that could be a pattern of practice that needs to be addressed and remedied. This is a power that the federal government has had for years. They've used it for consent judgment purposes or consent decree purposes in Chicago, for example, against the Chicago Police Department. But depending upon, now this instance, I will say administrations at the federal level, the use of that does differ. And the Barr administration would not continue to enforce the consent judgment for a consent decree, for example, in Chicago, leaving the Illinois Attorney General with less tools in order to be able to address issues there. So I'm asking for that type of bill here to allow at the state level that type of thing to take place. That's an example of some things I would like to see take place.
Are you optimistic at this session?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I do believe that we've come a long way already with the special sessions related to, for example, requiring a duty to intervene on behalf of officers who see another officer violating constitutional rights. That's progress. We've seen data reporting requirements implemented and augmented. That's important progress. The no-knock warrant bill is going to be important progress, as will the pattern and practice legislation. So I'm excited about it. I do think that there's probably much more that can be done, but the areas of focus that I will have on the two bills that I've just mentioned to you.
And that's where we have to leave it. Please come back before the end of session so we can continue this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we'll be right back.
Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Watch Nevada Newsmakers as we continue our coverage of the legislative session from Carson City. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching.